Said, let's let's do a little mindfulness practice and just kind of, get ourselves centered. And so we can just have that experience of, bringing ourselves into a healthy part of the nervous system and kind of get a little bit more centered. See if most of you probably know how to check your blood pressure. If you want to see what your pulse is right now and see what it is in a few minutes, go for it. I think that might be a fun practice. But let's, wherever you are, try and find a comfortable seat. Something where your hips aren't bothering you too much, your legs aren't bothering you too much, but where you can also align the spine. One of our friends said that their favorite posture is cat pose, and or maybe that's the hardest one for them. That's here with the spine rounded and in flexion, and instead you can rock to the fronts of your sits bones if you're seated and get the spine in extension as you sit up nice and tall. Letting the eyes close, let's take a deep breath through the nose if that's available to you. Nice, smooth, even exhalation. And as you bring your whole attention to your breath and the action of breathing, in the practice of yoga, we use the breath as that point of awareness that brings the energy of our minds to this moment. We're letting go of the constant movement of the mind that likes to run from past experience, analyze our past experiences, and then project into the future. Expectations, desires, outcomes. And instead, we come back to this breath, this inhalation, this exhalation. And it's from this constant concentration on the breath and breathing that we also get a deeper awareness of the body. So now, as you feel the breath move through the body, the sensation, this awareness becomes the information we need to create present action. Once you can feel the muscles move with the breath, then you can choose to engage the muscles, to align the bones, to bring presence into your posture, your pose, your asana. So here in your comfortable seat, as you root down through the seat and let the spine rise up tall, we take that inhale all the way down to the base of the spine. And as you fill it up towards the top of the chest and lungs, and then on the exhale, we draw the lower belly in and up, moving the energy and air upward and outward. And the inhalation has two directions. We root down into our seat as we let the spine grow up tall and we rise. And on the exhale, we continue the rising quality, energy and air, all the way up through to the third eye and the crown of the head. Inhale, root and rise. Exhale, keep rising. Inhale, root and rise. Exhale, keep rising. And as you stay in tune with the body, in tune with the breath, allow your focus on the breath and the body to be what directs the mind. The vibration of sound is tuned to the frequency of love. If the mind needs a little more to look at, to feel the body, feel the breath, and enjoy the sound. Namaste. So our introduction there is kind of what I would consider the basics of a mindfulness practice, and where I would probably start most people in dealing with, since we're talking about stress specifically. I think the last time we talked, we talked about chronic pain, and so I think we were talking about yoga for pain. Is that correct? Yeah, I think so. And then I mentioned that because I think that we all, as practitioners here, know that that's a big type of stress. That if we look back at like what's causing stress and how the brain could change under stress, then I think it's good to at least note that chronic pain can be a stressor that can cause depression, and that can be stressful.
So I think we're talking about yoga for general stress today, because we talked about it for pain before and people wanted you back to talk about stress. Perfect.
Right. So I was just acknowledging that that's one type of stress. Right. We know that. So that's stress. So what's interesting about that subject is that a lot of the same things that we would do for general stress would also be the same things that we might do for pain management. The biggest difference is if we're specifically focusing on stress, then we would probably focus a little less necessarily on alignment, although if chronic pain is a part of that stress, then alignment and posture is going to be very, very, very important. But if we're talking about just like what are the tools in the yoga practice that are specifically to like bring the nervous system down, then in a lot of ways, there's, some, depending on what the stress is, something like a back bend, where we were talking about postures earlier, might actually not be very good. A very dynamic pose might not be a very good situation for a person who's looking for yoga practice for stress. So in the yoga practice, the way that I've learned it, as far as like, if there's postures that are good for stress, they tend to be the forward bends. So I think we can all easily see like kind of what that means. But let's just, if everybody can or wants to, you can do this in your chair. Since I'm sitting on the floor, I'm going to stand up for a moment. But we'll do some of these kind of seated in a moment. And so the forward fold, just to, make it very clear. And if we're to do one that's like a less stressful forward fold, we would want to do that with the feet a little bit wider than the hips, right? So, these can be great, getting out wide, but that takes a certain amount of flexibility, which may not be very stress relieving. The things that are kind of like just in the middle for everyone, or most people, is that if they can stand, they would stand with their feet a little bit wider than the hips, toes facing forward. And one of the positions that I think is really relaxing too in a standing forward fold is to not even ask the person to necessarily just put their hands on the ground, because a lot of people can't do that. An easy variation for that is to put your hands on a brick. Another easy variation would be to like put your hands on a chair or the side of a table. But then one that everybody can do without any props at all is to just take the hands to opposite elbows and fold forward. And then the things that I find that also are very calming to the nervous system is that sometimes people feel more stress if they feel like they have to be stretching or they have to be in a very specific posture. So a lot of times, especially if I'm trying to de-escalate the nervous system a bit, a little gentle movement, even in the pose, can be really nice. Then you just kind of sway the weight of your hips a little side to side. Maybe sway the head and the arms a little side to side. And you can find some nice little places inside this pose to help relax the body. And of course here, for most people, if this isn't an issue of balance, you could even let the eyes close. And then, of course, come back to the body and the breath. So what we're trying to do is find nice little places where it helps us to kind of access the nervous system. And in yoga, we consider the breath the doorway between the two sides of the nervous system. So we come back to the breath and concentrate on the breath a lot. If, though, I'm trying to create a very kind of relaxing situation, now alignment-wise, and this is why I pointed out the difference between maybe yoga for physical chronic pain, I would probably be trying, especially if it's lower back pain, to have a person come up with an extended spine to standing like so. But if I'm trying to just create some mind-body awareness that's more relaxing, is then I'd let them have their arms kind of hang and then very slowly roll up the spine. And the slower you do it, the more intentional and more relaxing it is, because it helps give your brain something to concentrate on. I like that one too, because there's other body practices like Feldenkrais, like Tai Chi and this and that, where like undulating and rolling the spine can be a very relaxing situation for the nervous system. That being said, though, definitely when in the yoga practice itself, we suggest more calming postures are you really like seated forward folds. That tends to be the thing that's like most suggested. But you'll notice there's most of those places we can do the undulation of the spine as well and help work into the nervous system and work into that integrity of the vertebra. So that being said, I'm going to take a seat here. And of course, if you want to sit on the ground, that's great. Maybe you have something to sit on like a blanket. I'm going to use a blanket. It just feels nice under my hips. And so one of the most simple forward folds is what we call Paschimottanasana. And this is just seated forward bend. And it looks a lot like that standing forward fold. The way to get into it, if you're going the traditional route, is you press the hands down next to the hips to extend the spine first. Maybe you take the arms up overhead, and then as you exhale, you would reach down and grab the outsides of the feet. This, however, is not always relaxing for people, especially if they're not very flexible. So how do I make this more relaxing? I can use some bricks to support the head.
Can I put my feet on my desk since I realized my floor was so dirty?
Oh, totally. That's a really good way to get a little extra hamstring length in there. You know, and stretching out the legs, getting the legs to open up is also relaxing for the nervous system. So you can I'll do a couple variations here just to give you some ideas of like what you yourself can do and or suggest to people to make these kinds of things comfortable and accessible. So, and these are really traditional ways in the yoga practice. Bricks under the forehead. I mean, this could be your desk. You know, you could put your head on the edge of the desk and just take some time to let yourself breathe and feel the breath.
Ooh.
One of the other places though, so you can stay there if you really like that, or if you have like a bunch of pillows or blankets, then one of the other situations just in that simple forward fold is you take a bolster, blanket. I mean, you can use like 2 or 3 bed pillows and you just stack all the stuff up on top of your thighs. And then when you come into your forward fold,
a gel foam keyboard protector.
There you go. That's great, actually. It's probably really comfortable for your forehead. That sounds nice. And you put the pillows up there, forehead. The big thing is, I notice I have kind of a big nose. And I've always noticed for myself over the many years I've been doing yoga is that and if I'm in a more restorative class, a more relaxing class situation, then I have to make sure that my airway is still open, because as we were talking about, the breath and breathing are so important to relaxing the nervous system. So we want to make sure that wherever we suggest a person to go, that they're able to breathe freely. So I make sure this only hits my forehead. If it hits my nose, I have a hard time breathing. And I've been in classes where during a posture like this, in a restorative class, you might hold that posture for 5 to 15 minutes. Traditionally, in restorative practice, you would have each posture would be at least 5 minutes long. I think that that's an interesting kind of other aspect in the conversation of yoga and relaxation, is how long do I do a pose? Traditionally, they say that the muscles aren't going to change for 2 minutes. Now, this is different than a flow class, a vinyasa practice. In a vinyasa practice, in a flow practice where you're moving, you're getting relaxation from exercise, which exercise is a valid stress relief, right? It releases really good hormones, lots of really great neurological chemicals, also good for depression and this and that. So having a yoga practice that's an exercise practice, totally cool for stress relief. But if we're thinking about the person who may or may not be able to even get into exercise or is at work, where are we trying to grab those little moments of stress relief? Then that might be a different subject than our exercise practice, right? Maybe it might be putting your head on the edge of the desk with your foam gel wrist protector or whatever, keyboard protector, whatnot. Maybe you got some pillows in your office and you do this, or maybe you happen to be very graced and you get to be home. That also being said, though, there are some ways to approach the breath and the body that are a little more direct. And when doing specific breathing practices in yoga, they're often taught in conjunction with a seated posture. So if we look at this seat, this is what we call Sukhasana. And Sukhasana, technically any seated posture is a forward fold, right? I'm already hinged halfway in my hips just sitting here. Traditionally, we would talk about the pathways of energy moving through the body, and depending on which leg is in front or behind, you may or may not be influencing the energy in the more lunar manner, which would be the calming energy taught in yoga. So if you guys have ever been to a yoga class, which I'm sure most of you have, at the end, after Shavasana, they always tell you to roll over onto your right side. And when you roll over onto your right side, that is supposed to calm the solar energy in the right side and let the lunar on the left side that's up flow. So when you come out of Shavasana, you keep the calmness. And this has to do with what we call the nadis, like I said, the rivers and streams of energy through the body. So I just mentioned that because it's kind of interesting to know that there's always a little bit deeper to go in these subjects, right? But if we were to do a breathing exercise, that's one of my favorites, and it specifically works with these nadis, with these stream of energy going through the body, and it's also one of the ones that's most suggested for stress, is called Nadi Shodhana. Now, because specifically we instruct that you're supposed to be doing, your hands are going to be in a position and your legs are going to be crossed in a certain way that's going to help direct the energy properly. The right leg is in first, left leg is in front. I'm not mirroring you right now. So I'm going to do exactly, I don't want to mess up my energy body. So I'm going to do it. So if you're doing the opposite of me, this is my right hand, this is my left hand. Okay? So the left hand traditionally would go down. The right hand will go up. Then we take the middle two fingers here, right? Close those in. And we'll use the thumb and the ring finger to work the different sides of the nostrils, to work the flow of air through the sinuses to help us create some relaxation. So it's balancing out the flow of the energy from left, right brain, left, right sides of the body. And the way we do this is, now this is kind of interesting too. The other subtle aspects are, if you put your thumb right on the bony part, all you got to do is just kind of gently pull down to close off that nostril, right? And if you put your ring finger on that bony part, you just gently pull down. When I first started doing yoga and I would see this practiced, I would do this thing, right? Like I push my thumb right up against the nostril and like kind of, I was a little too forceful, really. And well, really all we just need to do is, you can feel how that closes off the air if all you do is just kind of lightly pull down, right? So let's give this a shot. Sit up tall. The other version you can do with your left hand is you can fold it into the lap, but traditionally, at least the way I learned it taught, was fingers down so that we're keeping energy rooted through one side of the body, even while energy is moving upward through the other side of the body. And we'll take a full breath together. And then we're going to take an inhale. And then closing off the right nostril by just slightly pulling down, we exhale through the left. Then keeping the right nostril closed, take an inhale through the left. And then once you meet the top of that breath inhalation, you can then close off the left nostril and then exhale out through the right. Keeping the left nostril closed, inhale through right. At the top of the breath, switch sides using the thumb to close off the right nostril, exhale out through the left. Keep the right nostril closed, inhale through left. Closing off the left, exhale out through right. Inhale right. Closing off right, exhale left. Inhale left. Closing off left, exhale right. We're going to continue a few more rounds of this. Inhale right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. We're going to do just a couple more rounds. I just would really love for you to have this experience. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Now we're going to do just one more time. Inhale left. Because traditionally it's taught to finish with an exhalation on the left-hand side. So we just exhale right, take an inhale right, exhale left. And then you can let the back of the right hand rest on the top of your right knee. If you like, you can let the thumb and second finger touch, just supposed to help complete the rhythm of the heart energy. And just let your eyes stay closed and then return to what feels like a natural breath and notice if your nervous system has changed. Namaste. Thank you. So you can let your eyes open, and always open to feedback, but hopefully you guys kind of got a chance to feel there just how a little bit of breath work, and that's what we call in yoga pranayama. Prana basically means energy, but it's also kind of synonymous with the word for breath. So sometimes in yoga we'll talk about the prana of a posture. Even the prana can be referred to the quality, the energy of the skin. But ultimately, you can always refer to breath as prana, and pranayama would be the practice of breath work. So what I thought was really interesting about that, because I've been taught many times about different pranayama practices, but we see what happens there is we have a slight resistance, which is exercising the diaphragm, and then the research that we were talking about in the beginning of this talk was that they had used, scientists had used a breath resistant tool in order to create resistance in the breath, but steadiness in the breath. And by using that resistance, it exercises the diaphragm and lowers people's blood pressure. And yet, traditionally in yoga, we have places that we do that in breathing practice by closing off one nostril, right? We're not only moving energy from one side of the body to the other, accentuating our lunar quality, which is a calming aspect of the breath and the body, but we're actually doing also something very scientifically proven, which is creating resistance so that diaphragm has to do some work, and we know now that it's bringing down our blood pressure. It's kind of cool that those things always seem to work together, science and many times conventional or old wisdom. One of my other favorite ones, though, is I've heard that in order to help people to keep from hyperventilation or this or that, is you blow into a bag or blow through a straw. One of the other traditional yoga pranayamas, and it's funny because not everybody can do this, right? We know that not everybody can make a little circle with their tongue, so a straw would be good for that person. But just to mention it, is that you take your tongue, you make a little tube with your tongue, right? And then just breathe evenly through the curl of the tongue to have that breath resistance. So the takeaway for me was that with the yoga practice, not only are postures important, but the pranayama, I think, is the most direct yoga practice for stress. So if you're thinking, well, Martin, you haven't said anything about meditation though, and we know that meditation is really good for stress. You're right. You're very, very right. There's a problem though, with meditation, and that is that if you have somebody that you're trying to, if you're trying to talk to somebody about, oh, you have problems with stress, oh, you should meditate. That's often very unsettling advice, because people have lots of different concepts of what meditation is or how it can be. And in that way, most people don't even really know what the yogic definition of meditation is. So I would define meditation under these terms, is where I'm calming the body and breath, allowing myself to go in, and in order to go towards meditation, I need to first create what we call dharana. And dharana is one pointed focus. So if you think when you go to a yoga class, though, you often have at least around 3 to 4 points of focus. You have your body and your breath, you know, all the aches and pains that you're feeling, so that's body. Then you can concentrate on your breath. And then you have the voice of the teacher, right? And then sometimes you also have like music, right? So there's 4 things. That's not even dharana. That's not even 1 point of focus. That's 4 points of focus. And it's nice to have that because it's distracting. But how often have you been in a yoga class and you're still like, you know, you're doing your down dogs, your up dogs and all this stuff. You have 4 points of focus and you're still thinking about some other stuff, right? So then your brain's still going number 5 and who knows how many directions your brain is going in. And it's nice to be in yoga because then every once in a while you focus back in on those 4 things and you start to feel more calm. So when we do pranayama, what I love about pranayama is you break it down to just one thing with the breath. So that really helps us with what we like to call dharana, which is 1 point of focus for the mind. That's really calming if you can get there. But to just tell somebody you need to sit down and quiet your mind can be a really frustrating task. So then
That sounds kind of like meditation, Martin.
it's close, right. It's close to meditation. So then what would, in the yogic definition of meditation, the next step is, so if you have 1 point of focus, this is dharana, the next step to meditation is none.
Oh.
And so that's hard. That's really hard. And I think that that's why, like, you know, it's nice to suggest meditation, but in the classic form, meditation is really for advanced practitioners. So it's interesting to me, and I would never like put anybody down for being like, oh, but I got this meditation app on my phone and I listen to it and it calms me down. That's great. And you should definitely do that. But since I'm talking to you guys here and I'm giving you some education about how yoga deals with stress, and definitely meditation is a great way to deal with stress, but so is dharana. And just since we're talking here today, classically in the yoga realm, we wouldn't call a guided practice a guided meditation. That's actually kind of like a conflict of interest. It's really actually dharana, which is 1 point of focus. And if it's being guided by somebody's voice and you're focusing on the breath, that's actually 2 points of focus. So it's just kind of an interesting thing. So in yoga, to work with stress, the things that I like to do are 1, create an environment. Here in the yoga studio right now, I have my infuser on. I've got some lavender oil in my infuser going. I have a little bit of music, which is really cool that I think you guys can all hear it going on. This is relaxing music for me. I have my fans going. It's shady. I have my yoga mat. I have some props, you know, things that make me comfortable. Like Kelly was saying, gel pad on the edge of the desk. That's awesome. Those are comfy, you know? Anything you can use to make your body comfortable. And then
done in 4 hours to go.
Pretty sick.
I do have a question,
excellent.
which I didn't ask at the time, but what if, oh, sorry. What if the blood pressure is normal or low, but a person is stressed? And you don't want to bring the blood pressure lower. Is it, Renata, I'm extrapolating your question now. Is it bad to do this? I mean, if you're going to lower your blood pressure by doing this, is that bad?
Well, I would think that that would be more of a medical question, as far as like, if it's really that bad for that person to lower their blood pressure. I am not a doctor, so I can't answer that specifically, but what I can say is that traditionally with yoga is that, in the yoga practice, there have been many yogis that are able to lower their heart rate and their blood pressure so low that they do reach those very deep states of relaxation and meditation. And I've never heard of anybody killing themselves doing that. So I would think, just answering from a yogic perspective, I don't think there's too low that you can go. But like I said, I'm not a
Yeah.
doctor.
From a medical perspective, I would think that if you're living with a low blood pressure, like in sleep, then you would get down to what you're at in sleep. And let's see,
Right.
Kathleen says, I would think that someone with low blood pressure would still have a rise in blood pressure with stress, so it would still be good. Yeah, I would wonder what that person's blood pressure did throughout the day and night, because I don't think you would be going lower than your relaxation
Yeah.
blood pressure, which is good for you.
I would ask you, if this was like my client standing in front of me and they're saying, I would one, ask them like, what kind of, are you on blood pressure medication? And two, have you talked to your doctor about that recently? Three, like we've already talked about, I would make sure that you were sitting down or laying down if you're going to be doing these practices, right? So then you're in no injury of falling, you know. These kind of breathing practices for an advanced yoga practitioner, could they do the breathing practice in, say, like an inversion, headstand, handstand? Yes, I have. But I also I've been doing yoga for 25 years, and I know where my edges are, and I'm not really afraid of like causing myself to pass out and like fall and hurt myself. So if I was working with somebody, I think that would be, as far as low blood pressure goes, my fear would fall. That being said, because it is a good question, it's not uncommon for students to tell me, hey, I get dizzy when we go from folding forward back up to standing. And so that happens. Low blood pressure people, that does happen in class. And I just tell them, well, then don't do that part. Don't do the quicker forward fold, rise up. You take either one, take your time, come up nice and slow, or just do the arm part. Inhale, arms up, exhale, arms down by the side. That can be a good one for people with low blood pressure, especially if it's becoming like a balance issue. Does that help?
Yes, and then we had comment about dehydration, and yes, so that's,
Oh, big time. Yeah. Thank you.
yeah, and oh my gosh, I just looked at the clock and it's 12:52 already. Wow. Okay, it just like went boom.
I know.
Did I fall asleep for part of the session? I can't remember it all.
Is everybody relaxed now? Well, are there any more questions? The stress in yoga it's such a great subject, because the body brain connection, the nervous system, it's like they're all so intertwined. I know that for me, most of my life, I've really needed like some intense physical activity in order for my nervous system to start to relax. If somebody, even today, were like, Martin, when you get out of bed, you just got to go sit down. Like, oh, that just sounds like torture to me. And so different people are different. Whereas like my partner, Sarah, if I bring her, her coffee in bed and her book and some food, she could sit there all day long. I can't do that. It'll drive me bonkers. But if I do some intense exercise and then I go to sit, and I want to do one of these breathing exercises, then I feel like I can access more of the benefit of what we went through today. So I think it's interesting too, if you're working with somebody, you know, learning about what their nervous system triggers are, you know, where their kind of baseline is. I think that came up when we're talking about blood pressure, is like, you know, different people have different baseline blood pressures and whatnot. Different people have different baselines of stress. And for some people, the thought of exercising causes them more stress. And for some people like me, tell me to sit down and be quiet, I'm like, that freaks me out. I need something else first. So I think that's just another little thing that I've noticed over the years in working with different people in yoga.